All right, we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Virtual Design Master Season 4. This is a big year. This is a big event. As you know, for those who've been following along, we are now at the Challenge 3 for our season this time around. And this is a very interesting time because we've seen the culmination of a lot of development for all of our different folks who've been involved. We, of course, started off with a very large team of participants and competitors, and we've sort of whittled down the crew to our remaining 6 competitors. With us right now, we have the usual players. Myself, my name is Eric Wright. Of course, you may know me as @DiscoPosse, that big old thing underneath my face. And I am one of the co-founders of the Virtual Design Master event, along with Angelo Luciani. Angelo, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Excited for tonight.
And of course, everybody knows, or should know, Melissa, our creative director. Melissa, introduce yourself to the crew.
Hi, everybody. I'm the one responsible for the challenges, and I hope you like what I have in store for you later this evening.
So to say that tonight is epic would be an understatement from a lot of different angles. You know, we've seen a lot happen in the 4 years now that we've been running the event. We've seen a lot of evolving of people's skills, and we've seen some very intense challenges. And we're going to be very lucky again tonight that we've got a great crew, not only helping us out here tonight, which we'll introduce shortly, but we also are supported by a lot of great sponsors. With that, Angelo, do you want to just introduce the audience to all of our great sponsors for Season 4? It's been a spectacular year to have everybody on board.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. We're very, very grateful to all the community and vendor sponsors for the challenge. All the prizes go directly to the participants for their hard work. So with that, let me run down the list real quick. We'd like to thank VM Turbo for their $1,000 first place gift. We'd like to thank VMUG for their $1,000 gift, $500 for the first place, $500 for second place. We'd like to thank Jason Langer, great community member, for his $400 value gift. Timothy Patterson, participant in Virtual Design Master in the past. We want to thank him for his $200 AWS credit, $200 gift towards AWS credit and mentoring towards AWS Solution Architect Professional exam. We also like to thank Stephen, another Virtual Design Master participant, for his gift, Pluralsight subscription and something fun. Folks put in a lot of time with Virtual Design Master, so hopefully a dinner or a dinner voucher or something like that will help folks. Kudzo, $250 Amazon gift card. We'd like to thank James Brown, another community member, for his $150 Amazon gift card. And we also have a community member who donated $250 Amazon gift card. So we're excited about that. And finally, Brian Sir, who is giving away 8 copies of his book, Architecting End User Computing Solutions.
Now, along with our sponsors, of course, we've got our faithful judges. So, Melissa, you've seen some new faces crop up every year. You want to tell us all about our judges this year.
Yeah, you know, we've had new faces every year. We've had judges return every year. Really, without them, we wouldn't have a competition. It wouldn't be fair for the 3 of us to kind of, you know, give the challenges, coach the contestants, and then judge them as well. So really, thanks goes out to our judges. They review every single one of these designs. They provide feedback. They're on every week for the defenses. We really wouldn't have a competition without them. So judges, if I'll go through you one by one. If you want to introduce yourselves real quick to the crowd, that would be fantastic. We'll start with you, Edward.
Hello, I'm Edward Haledke. I work at TVP Strategy as an analyst, consultant, technologist, writer, you name it, and it's been a joy to be on the show.
How about Brian?
Hi, Brian Kirsch. I'm an instructor over at Milwaukee Area Technical College, and happy to be back for my 3rd season.
And last but certainly not least, Mr. VCDX 133, Renee.
So my name's Renee Van Den Bedham. I'm Chief Architect at Round Tower Technologies in the Midwest. I'm also VCDX 133, as Melissa just mentioned, and MPX number 8.
Forgot that one. I'll get it next time, Renee.
So, of course, with our judges, we've got some great competitors, and this is the time when the challenges really begin. We see our folks that have a very short period of time to introduce their previous challenge. We went through our orchestration challenge. We tend to follow a bit of a flow, so don't worry, we may twist it up next season just to make sure no one seems to find our secrets. We talked about orchestration. We gave a really intense challenge which talked about using multiple technologies, multiple solutions, and I can tell by the Twitter stream that there was a lot of discomfort, which is precisely where we like to see, because I saw a huge difference in the results. Angelo, if you want to start us through, and now's the chance for our first group of competitors to defend.
Great. So folks know the deal here. One little twist, maybe not a twist, but one little twist. Because there's fewer competitors at this point, we're going to give the judges a little extra time to sort of probe a little deeper, ask a few more questions, press you a little bit to get a sense of your thinking on your design. So it might be more than just 1 or 2 questions per judge. So let's get ready for that. So we're going to start with Paul. How are you, Paul?
I am doing all right. How about yourself?
Good to see you. You have 60 seconds to explain your design decisions starting now.
All right. Well, I appreciated this challenge because automation has been a big missing tool from my toolbox. Up until this point, I'd only really used PowerShell here and there a little bit, or PowerCLI. So I kind of went into this one completely blind. I picked Puppet and I picked Ansible for the automation components, and I started working in my home lab. I wanted to build it up so I could actually do it at home, like get the code running, get everything going, do some nice demos. My home lab did not have enough capacity to get this all done, so I kind of went down a rabbit hole for a little while there. So what I did is I started looking at it more theoretically, doing a lot of reading, watching a lot of videos, and I just kind of tried to put together code and some structure for Ansible that I thought would work without being able to test it. I did not set up a virtual environment. I just ran out of time to set that up. And I started looking at Puppet and
you're out of time here, Paul.
All right.
Good job. Good job. Brian, any comments or questions?
So a few questions. Not having the home lab to set it up. What about pushing it out to the cloud using AWS, Azure? Any thoughts there?
I did think about that. I also kind of thought I was going down a deep rabbit hole trying to build and configure and get it up and running. As Angelo pointed out in a tweet, getting the documentation and the thought behind it was just as important as getting it up and running. So I kind of made, I wouldn't say a coin flip decision, but decided to shift my focus from getting it running to, okay, let's try to understand it, because this is something I'm going to want to use going forward in my professional life. I'm going to set this up and once I get a little bit more capacity in my lab to run it, as a practice as well.
So just to follow on to that, where did you kind of hit critical mass when you said you went down a rabbit hole? So when did you realize that, okay, I can't pull this off at home? What was that shift? When did that hit?
It was just the resource suck that was coming from vCenter Server and running the domain controller I had and a few other VMs. So the lab kept locking up on me. So I was like, okay, well, we could I spent not my entire Saturday, but a good chunk of my Saturday trying to get that lab up and running. And I was like, all right, do I spend more time on Sunday, or do I start to dive into this product I've never really touched before? So that's why I decided, okay, well, let's do some reading, let's do some video learning, versus trying to get a lab component built.
That's fair. I like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Brian. Edward, any comments, questions?
Well, one, in your document, you have this wonderful thing here. It says Ansible SSH user and SSH pass. Um, First off, they're in clear text. That would be something I would be thinking about. How would you have protected those? What were your thought process around protecting it so that things are not in clear text in easily accessed files that people would love to see? They want to see how you configure everything, because once they get it, they can own your system. So I'm looking at this going, I wouldn't even put that in the document, but you did.
Yeah, no, I wanted to put the I wanted to put like the actual some of the code, like the thinking behind it in there, so like, what I was thinking could be seen. As for hiding the password and the username that not in plain text, I just did not get that far into my diving into.
What would you, now that it's there, I know you didn't get that far, how would you do this? Think about it. You got a security problem. How are you going to solve it? Even your document does, so you're actually need to concentrate on some of this stuff too. So how would you solve it?
Well, not putting the Ansible user SSH in the document going out. On my microphone, going out to the world and putting it on GitHub, obviously. I would suppose locking down that file, the inventory file, so that only say like I would have access to it. That's not terribly efficient, I guess. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
That's a good start, but it's actually not, because you need to ask yourself this one question. Everybody does when they start dealing with security. What is the difference between an admin who has rights to a file or to a document or to a program and a really good electronic copy of that admin? So those are the things we need to think about.
Okay.
And there's some tools out there that will help you do this. There's key management systems out there that may be able to help you do this as well. So start thinking along those paths.
Okay.
As a way to increase the ability. The other question is this. You decided in your document to put all the Puppet components on one server. How does that give me, how would I change that to be much more available? You're talking about key components, so if I'm going to constantly do continuous integration, continuous deployment, how do I make that available?
I started with the monolithic, just space constraints for our environment, because we don't know what's coming down the pipeline. I would do something along the lines of putting that within like a VMware HA or maybe even a fault tolerance group, just to keep it up and running if it were to fail. Backup copies.
What is the performance penalty of doing multi-CPU fault tolerance?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
What are the requirements to allow you to do multi-CPU fault tolerance?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. You need to think about, if you're going to suggest using a technology, there are limitations to almost every technology. You need to know what they are when you suggest them, because you're actually telling people they need to make a pretty massive change to their environment to do that. Are there other ways to gain that availability?
Availability. Just the first two that come to mind are replication and.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Good. Thank you, Edward. Renee, comments, questions for Paul?
Yep. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
That's going all right. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. So you selected two orchestration platforms, Puppet and Ansible.
Yes.
How did you use the two to complement each other?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How did you use the two to complement each other to meet the requirements of the challenge?
Well, what I liked about Puppet was that Ansible was there wasn't a client-server relationship. You could just reach out, connect to the end server, push what you needed to, or reach out to like vCenter and build your VMs. But it's all very much like command line based. Whereas what I liked about the Puppet platform was there's a there's an actual like management interface where you can see it's presented very clearly what's been done, what's not been done, any changes, how many changes, which I thought worked well for the scope of the, well, not so much of this project, but we could apply that towards some of the things from last project where we needed to be able to keep an eye on things, keep track of any changes, keep our environment secure.
All right. How did you meet the requirement to patch each server? What did you do there?
Actually, I did not get to that part of my code. That was just
so let's say you didn't have time. What would it look like? What were you thinking?
It was going to go out and check against like a base copy or like the last known configuration, and check against where we would store our updated versions or our patch levels that we wanted. And if, say, it met it, it wouldn't change it. Obviously, if there's a difference, it would pull down the updated code and apply it.
Right. And could you use the same patch repository for the two operating systems that you're asked to build? So Ubuntu and...
Yeah, no, I believe so, because say we use GitHub, you just store the files there. Both can just hit the Git repository and pull it down.
Would you actually store patching binaries within GitHub?
I probably would use I'm not sure I would use that solution. That's just what was presented for the challenge. What I would use specifically, I'm not certain. Again, this is all still fairly new to me.
So, right. Yeah. So GitHub, the requirement was to have the source code there, not your binaries. You'd have a patching server of some sort in your local infrastructure.
Yes.
And how did you go about meeting the GitHub requirement of the challenge?
I just kind of researched
the Hello World script.
Yeah, I again just kind of research and looking at existing code. Trying to figure out exactly how to run that code to pull it. Put a Hello World file on there and created a playbook file to pull the code.
And that playbook file, where was that?
That was stored on my GitHub. I put that up there rather than slamming a bunch of pages of code in the design doc. Right.
And so what was the orchestration mechanism you used to get that into the operating system, into the OS, the VM?
The actual, like, the Ansible playbook?
Yeah, so is that what you used, Ansible?
Yes.
Playbook?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Renee. Okay, Paul, you're off the hot seat. Now, don't drop off because we do have a special prize for the Group 1 defenders. So stay on and continue watching. You can watch others sweat, so that's great. So don't drop off. Gareth, how are you? Are you there? I don't think we can. We have no sound. I'll give you one more try.
I think we have no communication from the moon base.
You there?
Yes, but would you have been on Earth or the moon base?
Yes, there you go.
Or Mars, for that matter.
Yeah.
Or in the ship in between all three.
We can't we don't hear you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch over to Katarina. You're up. It defaulted to you, so you're up. How are you?
Tired, but okay.
Good. And by the way, folks, there was a lot of great chatter on Slack, back channel on Slack between all the competitors, and it was great to see. And a lot of the images they were posting were pretty funny. So good. So Renee, any comments or questions for Katarina?
Should I defend first?
Oh, geez. Oh my God. Hang on, Renee. Sorry. Oh gosh. Yes, you should defend first. Good point. Let me bring up my timer. Oh, that would have been good. You could have got out of that one. That would have been good. But you have 60 seconds to explain your design choices starting now.
Okay. So yeah, I also went into this challenge with no automation experience whatsoever, and unfortunately my Linux skills consisted of maybe like ls commands, so also not that great to start off. But for orchestration, I have decided to use Ansible and Salt to manage both of the CentOS and Ubuntu systems. For the actual provisioning, I ended up using VRA to be able to provision the VMs and, more importantly, get IPs to them, to have them on the network and to be able to start somehow managing them. I have tried this many times and had to rebuild it like 100 times, so also the documentation part was unfortunately lacking due to that, because I was making too many changes, but my goal was just to try to get it working as much as I could. So
And your time is up. Good explanation. So now, Renee, any comments or questions?
Yep. How's it going? Good?
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks.
Good. Okay, so I saw, could you tell me about the two orchestration platforms that you selected? So Ansible and vRealize Automation.
And Salt. Okay, so what I have used was Ansible first. That was actually the first one I started working with, and I found it quite easier to use than the other ones. So that was the one I basically installed the Ansible master, created the tasks for the Nginx installation, and also to get the file from GitHub. And I was able to manage both CentOS and Ubuntu using Ansible. And then the second one I used was Salt. Originally, I wanted to go with Chef, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it working properly. So I went to Salt and started using that. So deployed the Salt master and the minions. Well, two minions, one CentOS, one Ubuntu again. Was able to get them communicating, and again created brands to basically install Nginx and get the file from GitHub. And also,
so in your design,
yep.
In your design, you also have vRealize Orchestrator and vRealize Automation.
So
how did all of that fit together?
Okay, so how this works was I used the VRA environment to basically provision then later on the VMs. Unfortunately, that was the last part I was doing, but I had some basic setup in place. I've created all of the necessary components. I took one host in the lab to create the resource for that, created all of the necessary parts in VRA as the business group, and I created all of the I created the blueprints for the virtual machines, the networks. I selected an IP range to be used, so the IP can be assigned, and so on. So the point was to use this to provision VMs, get IPs assigned to the VMs, and then later on I would be able to use them with my automation. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that that part in between after provisioning and then updating the let's say Ansible master with the new IPs and so working.
Right. So let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. You've got 4 automation platforms kind of bundled together. How do you think that would impact the people that you're handing it to that actually have to run the solution?
Yes, I understand it's quite complex. How I understood the challenge was that we had to use 2 different orchestration or configuration tools. So basically to change the configuration within the VMs or the OSs. So that's why I went with Ansible and Salt. And originally I wanted to also use Ansible to provision the VMs because I saw it was possible. But again, I had issues with that.
So let me ask this question. When you compare vRealize Automation to vRealize Orchestrator to Ansible and to Chef, they can all kind of do the same things. Yes?
It is
so you selected 4, not 2, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well,
So,
basically,
so
VRO. Yes. Sorry.
let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. If you could go back and do it again, what would it look like if you wanted to simplify things? So I'm your customer. I've said this is too complicated.
Okay.
What would you do to change it?
I wouldn't use salt. As I said, I only added it because I thought that was the requirement to have two different tools. I still like Ansible, and what I'm actually still working on, because I like this challenge and I actually got into it, so I'm working on the integration of Ansible with the VRA. So to be able to fully provision the VMs and also then run the configuration playbooks on top of them.
Right.
So that's something
So
I'm working
in your previous design, you had NSX. So how do you integrate NSX with VRA?
Yes. I still use, I mean, I need to use the network. I was expecting again the question about NSX, but basically, yes, also in the VRA environment, there is an NSX manager and 3 controllers in place. I have a network created there, which I was using for the VMs, and the network was also part of the blueprint, so the assignment of the network. It's added there, so when I basically request a deployment of a VM, I get the IP assigned from there.
Is there anything special that you need to do to vRealize Orchestrator when you're using VRA and NSX?
Well, the orchestrator is actually the one that comes with VRA as part of the default installation, I would say.
Right, oh, it's embedded, yes. So you went with the embedded version, right?
Yeah, I went with the embedded version, so there are not, I mean, apart from endpoints that are connected, I did not really do any custom special settings there.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. NSX strikes again, Katerina.
Yes, I just need more time.
Yeah, even last week when Renee wasn't here, it struck. Yeah. So good stuff. Brian, any comments or questions?
You brought up in your defense that not knowing Linux kind of hurt you a little bit. With all the automation tools, you went through 4 of them, 4 different orchestration pieces. What impact did that really have on you?
Again, I was primarily focusing on Ansible and Salt. The difference for me was actually, first of all, getting the things working. I really had a hard time actually doing anything on the systems, and also with CentOS and Ubuntu being different and using sometimes different commands. I was really struggling there. Like, I also had issues with when I was deploying my RSA keys to actually allow the communication between the tools. I was just not able to get it working on Ubuntu because, yes, I used root to do my stuff, but I wasn't able to get it working with another user in the time frame, and this was easier. But, for example, for Ubuntu able that I need to do. So really not having the Linux knowledge was quite hard to understand maybe the basic stuff, I guess.
Because, you know, one of the things that a lot of people will say with the automation is it's all pretty easy to do. And in reality, it can be if you have enough of the framework underneath it. So now, I take it, did you come out of a Windows environment?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, you were 2 steps behind when you started.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Edward, comments, questions?
Yes. Hello, Katerina. 2 questions. You mentioned using VRA and Ansible. Let's just say you stuck with those 2. How would you get availability for VRA? How would you deploy VRA to gain the availability, or what would you use to do it? You're talking about a fairly critical system and now needs to be highly available.
Yes. I would try to deploy it in some kind of high availability mode, but unfortunately I do not really have the experience with that yet, as it's still quite new to me. but I would like to, yeah, do
Okay.
that. I don't have the experience with that yet. So.
All right.
But of course, that would be something that I would look into.
Okay. Now, you also talked about Ansible and Linux and everything like that. How would you patch all the components of VRA, of which there are many? How would you patch the components of Ansible? How would you patch everything? What tools would you use or methodologies?
Okay. So for the operating systems, I very briefly included that I would just create, again, Ansible unsolved playbooks to run the updates, and also separating the updates to run first on some kind of test machines and then later on to do it on the production ones. Um, so that was the part that I tried to include at least briefly. For all of the other tools, I did not include them, but that would be, I guess, at this stage, just the regular manual maintenance, I guess, updating the components. At this stage, I'm not sure how all of that would be automated. The
So let's
Ansible
say I'm
master,
doing
it's
this in 3 different data centers. One's on the moon and one's on Mars. One's on the, well, let's say just these two. How do I do manual updates when there may not be people there
mm,
when a security release comes out?
yeah. I understand the need for automating this, but really at this stage, I did not get to
Okay.
that part.
Thinking outside the box and outside your design, what approach would you take to doing that?
To updating the components.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure really.
Okay.
I'm sure it can be automated, but I'm not sure how right now.
All right. And now I do have another question, is that now I have all this wonderful automation in place. Do I deploy directly when I do my automation? It's all my data, all my code is stored on GitHub. Am I going to go straight from GitHub from the automation directly to production, or is something else in the way? What's happening there? Tell me that thought process.
Okay, so ideally you wouldn't want to do that, because if somebody gets to your GitHub store and adds stuff there that he wants to, you would be automatically deploying it to your system. So ideally you would like to prevent that. So with the patching, I did actually separate it to some test OS and then production. So I guess we would follow the same process for updating any kind of applications or getting applications from GitHub. So first getting it to some kind of separated environment, and only after that then confirm that it's okay, then deploying it to production.
So am I segregating the environment? In other words, having multiple environments within inside of one? Or do I need a whole new rack of computers and things to do this?
No, it would be just a segregated environment.
Okay. Now you mentioned NSX is in your designs.
Yes.
How can that be used to help me do this?
Yes. Well, first of all, I would separate the environments using VLANs. I would have some kind of firewalls in between the environments, so they can't talk to each other. And the other things that I still need to study to be able to fully answer this question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good, thank you, Edward. Good, Katerina. You're off the hot seat. Stay on, please. Don't drop off. I know the contestants are sleep deprived, so a lot of the answers are like, yeah, good. I just want to go to sleep. I'm so tired. So thanks for hanging in there, folks. Good stuff. So our final contestant, Gareth, are you there?
Yep, can you hear me this time?
Yep, sounds great.
Excellent. Sorry, zombies got into my audio stack somehow, so not quite sure how, but I got rid of them.
No problem. So you have 60 seconds to explain your design choices starting now.
So I probably took this a bit over the top. I looked at the brief and assumed we had to do two independent systems to try and keep some kind of reliability in there, just in case one fell. We can then use the other one. And I soon started off on the back foot because my whole lab came crashing to the floor by kind of Saturday morning. And unfortunately, a few family plans came up which put me a bit far behind. But a bit of a blessing in disguise because, as you well know, Angela, I reached out to you. I started looking at other hypervisors and looking, can I do things differently? Can I step out my comfort zone? Can I look at Nutanix? Can I look at the Microsoft stack? None of us has touched SCCM, and I soon started falling in love with the containers because of updates. Does everything need to be normal, or can it be careful that we can blow away and start again and just forget updates?
Good. You're under. You caught me off guard there because you're under a minute. So good job. Edward, any comments or questions?
Yes. How would you provide an available system? You're talking about, I mean, automation, to be honest, is kind of crucial to just a lot of systems out there. It becomes the critical component. So how do I make my automation available?
That was a tricky thing. The thing I found most tricky about this task was actually finding that glue that kept everything together. You could find a really good automation system or a really good, orchestration system, but it was finding that glue to keep everything together. And unfortunately, all the softwares I came across, every single one of them would have some flaw. For instance, VRO and VRA, I found even their own instance deploying the appliance, it's very hard to make it highly available unless you used HA. There wasn't any real easy way that I found straight out of the box of clustering it. So trying to get everything end to end highly available was actually really tricky.
Did you notice during the install of VRA it actually told you how to do this?
Yeah, I unfortunately had to install VRA by hand, so it kind of goes against it. But outside of that, I started looking, can I invoke this via a PowerShell script? I thought, I found myself getting too distracted there, so I moved away and tried keeping the environment up so at least I could try and demonstrate some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it did make me think, can I be more clever with this? Because again, ripping down the lab and building it back up, can I take, Ansible was another thing. I know Katerina mentioned it. Could I run book everything, spin it all up, bring it back down, and just treat it like cattle? But it was so much to do in a week. It was unbelievable.
Understand. Now, how would you protect your GitHub from having API key leakage, specifically around if you are using a cloud service and or you had your Ansible files with usernames and passwords and all sorts of fun stuff like that in there? How would you prevent them from going to GitHub in an automated fashion?
That is, well, automated, I'm not quite sure on. I know I can make my repositories private, but then that spins a bit of trouble into some of the automated workflows you probably saw me doing, is it kind of does inherently say you cannot use private workflows to do this function. So I could have maybe used some SSH keys somewhere along the line. I'm not sure. I didn't have enough time to dig into it. But maybe I could encrypt it somewhere with some SSH keys to make sure that my code's intact and I'm logging in that way. I just didn't get enough time to explore it, really.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking this question is that right now the biggest problem on Amazon is, one of the bigger problems on Amazon is API key leakage. And those API keys are leaked allow anybody to run any instance inside of your instance. And hundreds of thousands of dollars a month out of any one company are being leaked. It's an actual problem. So people that make that mistake have a problem.
Okay.
Now, the other question I have is, how would you patch everything? You're talking about VRA, which is at least 3 different operating systems. You're talking about Ansible, which is running on maybe a 4th operating system. You have the VMs you're actually deploying, which could be a 5th, 6th operating system. How you plan on patching everything?
I briefly touched on that. With the Linux operating systems, I'd probably, because of time constraints, I cheated and I would have probably used a cron job for now. But I was also wondering whether or not with VRA, if there's any way I could have an automated run, but probably called by a PowerShell script that would boot the OS up, patch it, spin it back down to another template ready for use. I really wanted to make everything very much kind of herding cattle where possible, so I could just blow anything away, bring it back up. it's up to date, ready to go. But in regards to VRA, I probably need some form of VMware's update manager running somewhere. But again, in regards to updating it, it's probably invoking it via some kind of REST API or maybe even another PowerShell script just to kind of give it a prod and go, can you go check the repository for me? I'm not aware of any way of automating it yet. There might be some good PowerShell commandlets out there, but I haven't come across them yet myself.
Okay. And one last final comment is that all those are great, and everybody's mentioned using them. I like the cron idea, but there's a feature in vSphere that you kind of overlooked that would allow you to become available if you made a mistake. Do you know what that feature is?
I'll be honest, I panicked towards the end. I thought, I haven't got exposed enough to either the products in my day-to-day job, so I thought this was a good chance to really get exposed. So I really haven't gone under the hood enough with them yet. We very lightly use them, so I think I need to do some more homework on them, to be perfectly honest, before I can answer that question.
It's one of the ones you actually use every day. It's snapshots.
Okay.
Because if you take a snapshot, it snapshots to disk and or memory. If you patch it and you make a bad patch, you could actually always automatically roll back to the previous snapshot.
Okay.
So you get some availability and protection there. It's something to think about when you do all of your updates. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I know when I'm playing with snapshots and appliances in the lab in the past, it's occasionally crashed things. So I've dare say, wandered away from that now and gone, do I need to back it up? But yeah, snapshots is a good option.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Edward. Renee, comments or questions?
Hey, Gareth. How you doing?
Not too bad, thanks. Yourself?
Good, good. Okay, you were talking about containers. Can you tell me about some of the pros and cons of containers?
So I've recently started playing with Docker, and the nice thing I like about containers is you're basically taking another OS. We had the two CentOS and Ubuntu, and you're basically creating more little mini hypervisors within that operating system that can communicate with one another and communicate with your operating system platform layer, but nothing else unless you specifically tell it otherwise. The nice thing about this is they're easily to spin up, easy to destroy, and I found them very nice and consistent. So you give it a preset set of variables. I want to run this version, this OS, this version of the software. You might even have repositories locally in your little Docker hub, and you just push it out, and away it goes. It was quite nice. I'm amazed I haven't used it sooner.
So what are the ideal applications that you would be running in containers? What's a common denominator for those types of apps?
It's usually kind of throwaway apps. A lot of code. I found Python, Java, web servers, databases.
So databases? Are you sure?
I found someone running a database with a WordPress. I thought it was a little bit risky, but someone's managed to do it out there.
Yeah, so generally, when you look at your apps, the question is, are they stateful or stateless? Stateless is perfect for containers. Yeah. You were talking about VRA and VRO, and you touched on availability earlier. So if you have an enterprise solution using VRA and VRO, how would you provide enterprise level availability?
Well, this thing, I think that all depends on your runbooks that you use. Getting enterprise availability on VRA and VRO.
So let me stop you there. I'm talking about the infrastructure itself. So vRealize automation and vRealize orchestrator, that's the infrastructure platform that you're running in your data center. How do you make it highly available?
Well,
if you don't know, it's fine. Just say you don't know.
Again, looking at designs and best practice white papers, I found that usually you have a set of infrastructure nodes and a management cluster. And I still feel a lot of people shy away from this. So I probably, again, I know we say constraints about the HA and whatnot, is maybe having VRO, VRA, and maybe even vCenter at a push, sat on their own 3-node management system, and just have them in some kind of fault-tolerant mode.
So let me ask this question. When you read about VRA, what are the two deployment options you have for VRA? What are the two fundamental availability options that you have? One is standalone. What's the other?
So the one I really explored was the appliance, because it was the only thing I could get from my lab due to kind of size constraints. I believe.
So we all have to use the appliance.
Okay.
But
So
there's two deployment modes. One is standalone. The other's distributed. Yeah.
Yeah, I unfortunately started exploring the standalone mode because I wanted to get it up as quick as I can. But I believe there is.
So if you're deploying for an enterprise level design, you're going to do a distributed installation, right?
Okay.
And you're using load balancers, and you're going to be highly available. Yeah. And with VRO, how can you make VRO highly available?
I believe you can just spin up more than one appliance, can you not? And it can talk to the backend database.
And what would you do? So you got two VRO appliances you deployed. You want to make them highly available. What do you do? What do you need? What are the two things?
I believe you need. I think it's a Postgres database sat somewhere that it can talk to, and you also need to have a single sign-on cluster that they can both talk to as well.
So you need a common database. You need to create a cluster of the VRO, two VRO appliances, and you need a load balancer out the front as well. Okay,
that's
thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Gareth, I was sweating that too, so you're not the only one, okay? I was sweating those questions too, buddy. So, but good questions to really make you think about your design and your design choices. So really good to hear. Brian, comments or questions?
You were the only one that used containers. The only person.
Yeah, I know. I just found, especially for the whole Hello World part of it, I felt it was again. I took some of the stuff from the previous challenges. How do we monitor this code that's going in and out? How do we keep an eye on what's going on in our infrastructure? And containers, for me, just seem to be the most logical way, especially for web servers, because I could keep an eye on the code. I could see when they're coming up and down. If any of you watched my video, it even sent me an email if anyone was tinkering with my containers. So I quite like that. I might be a bit odd, I found even looking at workflows and run books, even with monolithic, I want to build a web server. I took a lot of some of the guys at the VMUG, actually got to give a shout out to them actually. A few of the guys actually really helped me out. There was I believe, sorry, it was Sam did one of the talks at our local VMUG and showed us all the run books and really inspired me. I just unfortunately didn't get time to really kind of give it the all, really.
No, I like the container idea. I think it's great thinking outside the box. With your containers, did you have any thought on persistent storage to them?
No, I didn't. You can, which might have been quite good if you wanted some common code, but because of the fact I was deploying a web server, I could bundle the code and everything with me. I'd probably only use the storage if I had multiple web servers all wanting the same common web pages and only keeping them in one place.
Well, I'm just thinking if you would have to scale it up, Humanity Link, zombies, everything, it might have to grow. But persistent storage might be kind of critical coming up.
Yeah. It's certainly something to think about. I've only just kind of started my journey with containers, but I think I'm going to carry it on because it got me intrigued. But, there's a lot of use cases you can do with them. I just really just scrape the tip of the iceberg. I think I really need to get involved with them before developers come to saying, I want containers, and I'll be like, I'm already on the forefront. I know what I'm talking about, thankfully.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we've had some heavy-duty defenses. We're well into our event, and that's why this is the most difficult part of it. Of course, as you notice, we have 50% of our crew here with us as Group 1 of our defenders. We do want to keep you around for a few moments because, of course, you've all done such a smashing job of providing good defenses, good designs, stepping out of the box. And there is a prize for the Group 1 competitors because of the work that you've done. And while we don't want to send you home empty-handed, the prize for the Group 1 competitors is that you move on to challenge number 4, because we actually had our remaining 3 competitors had to bow out, and you 3 are now heading into the final challenge for Virtual Design Master Season 4. For the good news is you've gone forward, and the bad news is you're going forward. So don't get used to sleeping just yet. We did have a real great group of competitors and a lot of folks that wanted to keep on rolling. Of course, as everybody's learned, it's a real challenge. Kudos to everybody for stepping way outside of comfort, talking about operating systems you've never done, automation you've never dealt with. We're not going to say that it's going to be easy going to challenge 4, but it is going to be fun. And with that, I give the real important stuff to Melissa. So, Melissa, tell them what they won.
You've won an all-expenses-paid lab environment to run your 4th challenge in. Yay! So, now we're kind of moving on to our last challenge here. So the good news is you have more time for this. So you don't have to slam it all out 1 week. We're going to be here 2 weeks from tonight revealing our winner of Virtual Design Master Season 4. So as for your challenge, we've started to deploy infrastructure across the world based on our design from Challenge 3. We're still testing which locations work best for our ultimate goal of restoring the Earth's collaboration and communication in order to ensure we can keep any further threat to humanity at bay. Our ultimate goal is to bring humanity linked to a new platform. The world as we know it is made up with what we have access to. In this case, we have a VMware server and access to 2 public cloud environments. We have to change the way we think about our infrastructure to move further up the stack. In the final challenge, you will deploy a real environment with a focus on application and security. Imagine only having a web browser to do it. For that reason, this year's challenge is a little different. You have been provided 1 vSphere host on baremetalcloud.com, up to 2 EC2 instances on AWS, and up to 4 DigitalOcean instances. The environment will be named after one of the new anti-zombie weapons. The weapon is designed in the Utility Muffin Research Kitchen. This will be configured as a cross-cloud environment running a database-enabled web application. You will be given a set of requirements to explain the application, and the configuration needs to be of that environment. The Utility Muffin Research Kitchen is a base architecture to provide a secure, resilient application architecture as we prepare for our journey to recover the Earth.
I just always take joy. I know I heard some chuckles from Edward, so I'm guessing that you know the reference to where that one's from. So I did mention on Twitter, for folks that have been watching, that just like we used to do back in the Steve Jobs days, there's always just one more thing. So obviously we've got a huge challenge ahead of us for the 3 competitors. You'll be provided with credentials in order to access your environment. You are going to run in a shared environment. This is an additional twist. All the details will be shown because you're in a shared AWS platform and you've got shared environments in DigitalOcean. That means you have to work around each other in that same platform. So think about that as you secure your infrastructure and do other tasks. And of course, be nice, be a good neighbor. But for the folks that weren't able to come with us all the way to challenge number 4, we have a special surprise. We are reaching back into the pile. And with that, Melissa, why don't you tell us about bonus challenge for this year?
So last year we kind of instituted the notion of a bonus challenge. Everybody's worked so hard to get to this point. Even if you didn't make it all the way, we know how much effort you put in. So we want to offer one more challenge to everybody who's not proceeding to the final challenge. And of course, there'll be a prize involved. So as for your challenge, we've mentioned a lot that we've been really constrained by software on this season of Virtual Design Master. As we rebuild our infrastructure, software development is beginning to pick up. Your challenge is to tell us which new features you would implement in our next generation hypervisor and hypervisor management tools. You must submit at least 1 hypervisor feature and 1 hypervisor management feature, but feel free to come up with whatever you want and more than 1 of each. And remember that you need to justify why you would create each new feature.
This is a lot of fun for the folks that weren't able to come forward with us. We do want to spread some love. There will be a prize, of course, for the winner of the most sort of original and fun and useful design. There's a lot of criteria that are going to go into this one. We introduced what we call Challenge 5.5.5 last year.
Last year it was 5.5 by 5, so I guess this year it's 6.1.6. I don't want to say 6.6.6 because then you all think I'm really, really evil, and I'm really not. I'm really not.
I don't think I can hide behind Melissa with the evil challenges anymore because you're going to see my name all over this infrastructure, so I apologize in advance to folks. Because we're dabbling in AWS, we also have a special guest judge for our final challenge. So we have Timothy Patterson. He is at AWS Champ. Of course, Timothy was a previous Virtual Design Master winner, and Timothy's going to join us to judge the final challenge with everybody. So we know this is a lot of new ground for folks. Out of the three, just give us a nod. Who here is really good at AWS stuff? I don't see a lot of heads nodding up and down. Okay, who's here good with DigitalOcean? Perfect. Okay, who's good with a standalone vSphere environment and securing it without any vCenter? Perfect. Okay, good. We're all as uncomfortable as we should be. All right, there we go. You will get a very detailed document. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to us here at the crew. Thank you again to all of the folks that came with us this far. We were sorry to see our last round of folks that couldn't come forward. Thank you, of course. Congratulations to Katerina, Paul, Gareth. You've got a fun couple of weeks ahead of you. Deadlines are going to be stretched out a little bit more. Thank you again to Edwards, to Renee, to Brian, and of course, thank you, Angelo and Melissa, and to all the sponsors of Virtual Design Master. Yes, sir, Mr. Renee.
All right. So I just want to give the candidates some advice. This challenge is actually quite complicated and detailed, so they're going to have to make the most of their time. So the first one is focus on the actual deliverables. Gareth, I think you're a guy that easily gets distracted. You're going to have to keep your eye on the ball, mate. Yeah. keep away from containers. Just focus on what's being delivered, yeah. Be very tactical. Documentation. If you could build the most amazing infrastructure, but if you don't document it, we're not going to know the effort that's gone into it. So my advice is to document things. And the other thing is, one of the mistakes that some of the contestants made last year was their labs were running and then things were powered off, or they didn't have the right access or the right passwords, and we couldn't get in to judge their infrastructure. So make sure that your environments are actually running when you hand them in, and just check them to make sure that things are still going, right? So that when we log in as judges, we can see what's going on. Okay?
And to talk about security, I had Edward in mind with this one because I did, in fact, give you full root privileges to all three environments, which is the precise worst way to do it. So that means it's your job to secure your own environment. I specifically left the door open so that if it looks like I left it, then you're all in trouble. So keep security in mind as you go through. Of course, document your findings along the way, and then I imagine we'll have some good advice from both Timothy, especially on the AWS side, and Edward. If you have any questions, please share them with the broad email that you're going to receive, because all of us are on copy, and we do look forward to seeing everybody here in 2 weeks' time.
I have one more piece of advice. Don't worry about it, but don't put your passwords in GitHub, please.
And for safety, I do have to make this note. I will provide you with private GitHub repos, which we will remain private, so that if there is some slippage, because this is an actual public environment, it will stay under a private repo. So we will have a mild bit of protection, and they will remain private all the way up until the judging, and then we'll choose what stuff gets brought forward into the public one. So as Edward says, tread carefully, and we'll see. Like Edward Stone says, we're all watching.
You're now in the wild, so you have to be extremely careful.
All right, so everybody, Gareth, what do you think? You ready?
I think he's distracted.
No, just in a state of shock and couldn't turn my mic on quick enough. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm game. Hope everyone else is.
Paul, how's it feel?
There's a lot on my plate. It's going to be fun. I'll see you at the Indie VMUG in a couple of days.
I will see you at the Indie VMUG so I can test to see how you're doing. And trust me, I can't give any inside information.
I will bring lots of money.
Katerina, how are you feeling about the final challenge?
Oh, amazing. No problem at all.
All right, that's what I like to hear.
I hope to see NSX.
Well, with that, everybody, thank you very much for watching our live event here, and thank you for all the supporters of Virtual Design Master. We will see everybody here live at 8 p.m. on July 28th in 2 weeks to get our final challenge done. And, of course, follow along we're at VDM Challenge on Twitter. Follow hashtag Virtual Design Master, and, of course, you go to virtualdesignmaster.io, and we will post updates as we go. Thank you to everybody, and congratulations, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.